damn good, considering the alternative. Yes. It's only the older people here that laugh at those things. The young go, what does that mean?
Well, John, you
didn't get it, did you?
I don't get it. I'm right here with you, John. I got you. But you've become a staple at these conventions, and you've been traveling all over the world, and you've gotten to meet so many people and friends and fans. I want to know, what is your favorite part about getting to travel and meet people at conventions?
Oh, sometimes it's the food. But very often it isn't. It sounds so absurd and silly, and I've changed because I come to fan conventions. The fans have changed me. I would like to think it's for the better, but it's subjective. I look back at my younger self, and I do not really like my younger self. And the reason is, I don't think the younger Rhys-Davies really liked people. And it has come into these conventions. I mean, I do remember the first convention I went to, I think it was in the late 90s. I remember thinking, oh, for God's sake, why do I have to go to this stupid fan convention to promote this piece of crap that I'm doing? All those people dressed up as Captain Kirk. Come to get a bloody life. And I went, and slowly I realized that actually they do have a life. And some of them have the most rich and wonderful and heroic lives. And slowly they converted me to a love of mankind, actually. It's very odd. Because normally people love people when they're young, and the older they get, the more disappointed, grumbly sort of. I'm doing the reverse. Now, it may well be dementia. All right, anyway, that's enough of that silly nonsense. Come on, you've got any better questions than that.
Oh, yeah, I got a lot for you, John.
Come on.
Okay.
Know where we came from. It is only when we know where we are that we have some possible insight into what is to come. History is actually the most important subject of all. If I was revising the school curriculum these days, I would teach everything, including mathematics, through history. It is a fascinating subject. Incidentally, if I was a young 20-year-old going to read history at university with the idea of becoming a professor, these days, the man that I would be most interested in looking at is a man called Peter Turchin. Peter Turchin was a plant and animal scientist. He studied small groups of organisms and could make certain predictions about them. He then turned his attention to humans and human knowledge. And his contention is, and I may be, if he was here, he would be contradicting almost everything I'm saying, I'm sure. His conjecture is this, that there is now so much information about human behavior and so much computing power that it is possible to, in some detail, predict the future. In 2010, one of the big scientific magazines, either Science or Nature, one of the great magazines, did a preview of what was expected in science in the next decade. There was people talking about, stem cell developments and gene manipulation, all those sort of wonderful things and what they were hoping to do. 6 weeks later, they published something by Turchin, who said, look, I think we can predict for history as well. We can predict events. And what he did, he predicted that in 2020, there would be constitutional crises in both the United Kingdom and the United States. And I mean, that was absolute. I mean, you can predict a crisis in a general term, but a constitutional crisis is a very precise thing and very rare in established democracies like ours. So there's some real power to that thinking, I fear. Of course, he's been very coy about what he thinks is going to happen in this decade. But I would have thought that we're clearly in a time of such increasing uncertainties. I mean, I lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis. I was trying to get into Oxford, I think. Oh, was it Cambridge, that one? I failed that one too. But, you know, literally, we did not know that we would actually be alive at the end of the week. So what the hell was the point of, you know, having given, 10 years of summers and springs every year, just working at things, and suddenly, life was going to come to an end. Of course, it didn't that time. But I think we're in a more precarious state now than humans have ever been in history. Added to which, artificial intelligence and robotics really are changing things. I notice at these fan conventions, for instance, attendance at fan conventions is down 10 to 15%. The Milwaukee fan convention has been cancelled. Lack of interest. It is, I think the economy is actually far tighter, and people are being more cautious with their money because, in a way, the public actually has a curious, accurate judgment, more accurate than politicians sometimes, than we know. My manager, my agent, who's been a friend of mine really for 30 years now, he says, the mantra now is stay alive till 25. But there are real holes in the economy. Somebody was telling me that I think 1,200 jobs in advertising were lost in the United States last month. The advertising industry is collapsing. The film industry is almost not happening at the moment, at least in the United States. In pilot season, when the television pilots were being made, there'd be 40 or 50 pilots a year. I think somebody said to me that there was about 5 or 6 made this year. I was talking to an equipment man the other day, and he said, John, 2022, 2023, everyone was making films. He said, I brought a lot of new stuff. I got a big staff on. He said, I had 11 people working for me. This year, I've had to cut them back to 5. I can't get less than 5 because I can't service the lenses. I can't service the lenses and the camera equipment. He said, I'm selling stuff at less than I paid for them last year just to pay the bills. There is an extraordinary unease, I think, in our economy. It's almost like a pause between events happening, and then suddenly there's a quiet, and you don't know quite what the next tune is going to be, or where the next beat is. It may be just a completely sort of delusional, sort of old men get things so wrong, but it is my sense, and I've met one or two people here today who I was talking to about this, and they revealed the fact that actually they got fired this week. It's not the end of the world, but it's not as comfortable as we should have wished. For those of you who are slightly older, I'm obviously the oldest fart in the room. I beg your pardon when I say that. I'm obviously the oldest person in the room, but for those of you who are approaching my generation, we do realize that we had the best of times. There are certain cycles in economy, for instance. There's a wonderful book called The Rise and Fall of American Growth. And it basically said, look, the generations that came before us, every few years they could see progress. My father was born in 1909. Well, he, as a child, remembers, or remembered the first aeroplanes. Wow. Up until the beginning of the First World War, there were 850 aeroplanes of various sorts that had been made. By 1919, aircraft output was 25,000 a year. It's a huge change. My father lived to see me flying on Concorde. I'm of the generation that could honestly say, look, I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I drove to Heathrow Airport, I took the 9:15 flight to New York, I did a day's work in New York, I took the 6:15 flight back to Heathrow. I drove home and I was an hour late for dinner because we were having dinner with friends and I wasn't quite sure where they lived. That's a magic carpet story, instance, in that sort of time. And none of this younger generation have experienced that yet. Now, that may change. I hope it does. But there is a sense that my generation has that actually we were the lucky ones. We had the best of all possible worlds. Sorry, that's really depressing, isn't it? Yes. I tell you, yes, I love history. Yeah. And I am incapable of a soundbite.
That's okay. I just want to listen to you talk. So we do have a microphone if you guys want to line up for whatever questions you might have for John. While we're waiting for them to line up, John, I wanted to ask, obviously, The Lord of the Rings is one of the greatest franchises of all time. And I wanted to know, what was it like filming in that absolutely stunning environment?
New Zealand is stunning. When we went there, tourism in New Zealand was worth about 1.2, 1.3 billion New Zealand dollars a year. The last figures I saw were before COVID, and they changed the basis of the accounting of numbers. So it was either 14 billion or 17 billion dollars a year. And that is really largely attributable to Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. Peter Jackson did more to put New Zealand on the map of the world than any man since Captain Cook. Just phenomenal. Beautiful place. South Island is prettier than North Island, but there are some beautiful things in North Island as well. Don't waste your time on Auckland, it's just a big traffic jam. No, it's pretty good sailing too, and the fishing, oh dear Lord. Sadly, I should be in the Guinness Book of Records. You know, I really should, because when I drop a hook in the water, you can hear the fish laugh. It's not paranoia when the little buggers are out to get you. Yes. Yeah. All right, yes.
Yeah, who has some questions? Now's your chance, guys. Nothing's off limits. Let's hear some stories. What you got, Carl with the C? Do you have one? I feel like...
I have one.
Okay. Oh. All
Right.
right.
Just hit the red button.
All right. Go ahead.
I have a question. Because I see online, I'm a born-again Christian, I see you're open about your faith. That's awesome. You're open about your faith, being a Christian.
I'm not that good.
Well, the reason why I'm asking is because I noticed you got into Christian films. Like you did Peter with the Redemption with Alec Baldwin, Stephen Baldwin being Nero, you're Peter, you were St. Patrick. My point is, what made you decide to get into Christian films?
Look, I'm not good enough to call myself a Christian,
Okay.
right? Let's establish that first of all. I count myself a rationalist and a skeptic, but I do understand the power of faith. It is no coincidence that people, for instance, who go to church tend to live 14 months longer on average than those who don't. So there must be some beneficial effect to it. But what Christianity has given the world is unsurpassed by any other religion or any other faith. It is those early Christians getting together who say that, you know what, I think the Lord teaches me that my obligation is my obligation.
Yeah.
That my faith, that what I think, is mine, not what the emperor does. And from that, we have the beginnings of the right of the individual to think as they choose. From that, really, we have the beginnings of democracy, true democracy. Free speech, democracy actually come, its origins are from the early church.
Yes, of course.
It's those early Christians who get together and say, you know what, we have to praise the Lord, and the Lord loves music. Okay, so we're all going to learn to sing together the praises of the Lord. Okay, but you've got a great voice, and you've got a greater voice, and we're gonna work together. So you are going to be the choir master, okay? Now it's all very well as to put this together, but now what about adding a bit of musical instrument to it as well? Now you've been playing the piano for some time. They didn't have a piano, but you know. You need to spend more time doing that. And so we get the rise of professional musicians. We get the rise of the Mass, the Latin Mass. And from it, you've got all these wonderful things that are happening with music, from Monteverdi onwards. Then there's this great sort of crisis of faith, you know, between Protestant and Catholic. And they're all vying to make better music. You know, Senor, your Mass last week was a beautiful Mass. It is wonderful. It's new music, a new Mass. Now, I want another Mass from you, you know, next month. You see, put more ornamentation in it, because God loves ornamentation in music. And so that is where the whole Western canon of classical music has come from. And of course, there would also be the other variants of music as well that come from the spiritual. I mean, this is a glorious, glorious thing.
Amen to that.
When you think of art, you know, there are some faiths that do not believe that art should be perfect, that do not believe that patterns should be perfect. that believe that only God is perfect, and so if you weave something, you must make a mistake in it deliberately to show that you are not vying with God. So you have these wonderful saints that we've been talking about. We'll make pictures of them, and we put them on the thing, and we'll carve them. Once Van Eyck discovers, one of his contemporaries discovers that you can make oil paint, then we can get more detail, so we can reproduce biblical events in such fine detail. And that extraordinary painting, the adoration of the mystic ram, the most stolen painting in the world, by the way, the great Ghent altarpiece. Do go and see it if you can. I mean, it is suddenly, there's detail there. There are faces that you can really recognize there. And then suddenly all the bishops want one. Well, couldn't you do a picture of me as the bishop? and then all the rich burghers who are putting up money to beautify the church, they want pictures as well. The whole Western tradition of art comes from the church.
Wow.
The debt that humanity I don't want to get into the great debate and battle about slavery, but it is unquestioned that the Royal Navy, at the instruction of the Christians who believed that slavery was wrong, they policed the world from 1807 to really 1860, 1870, making sure that there was no slavery in the world. It actually cost the British economy 4% of its gross national product every year. Now, all I'm saying is that was Christianity that did that. Do not underestimate, do not disparage the contribution to Christianity in the healthy life of the entire world. Will that answer your question?
There you go.
Not really, but
Good
okay.
question. That's all right.
I was so happy that you came back in the newest Indiana Jones because it brought my childhood back. I felt like I was watching it again back in the 80s. I was like, there he is, there he is, I was a little boy. I'm like, there he is, he's back. I was hoping you were going on the venture with him, but it was awesome. So, because I said it reminded me as a little boy. Do you mind if I shake your hand and say thank you for coming back? Like a little boy, it just made me so excited because I came here to see you and Dean Cain. Only reason I came here today, I had no other reason to come. I didn't care about this, I didn't care about that, I only cared about you guys.
Find a better job, my boy. Yes, of course. Talk to you later. Oh, go on then. Oh, now the entire building comes to an end.
There it is.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right. Hey, what's your name?
Linda.
Hey, Linda.
Hello.
How did you meet you?
My very first girlfriend was called Linda. Yes.
I just have to know, I don't know if anybody else is curious, since you work with Lord of the Rings and you're so in-depth with that, how do you feel about the new Rings of Power? And I've heard people either hate it or they love it.
I saw the first couple of episodes, and I want to give it a good, I want to give it a good chance. It seemed to me that the problem is there's only really a couple of pages that Tolkien wrote that relate to that. So if you're starting to build on it, it's pretty tenuous. So I mean, how the hell do you follow a genius of a writer like Tolkien without being a genius of a writer? It seemed to me potentially interesting, though I'm not a fantasy buff myself. But it didn't seem to me to be really congruent with Tolkien's later Lord of the Rings thing. I see that there are similarities. I wish it well. And I see that my friend, young Gollum himself, is going to have the Adventures of Gollum. Now that should be more interesting. And I believe he's going to direct it, and Peter and Fran and Philip are all going to be part of the scenario, and I think that'll be very interesting.
Thank you, Linda. Appreciate it.
Hello, my name is Ricardo. I'm from Brazil.
I love Brazil.
I'm a huge fan. As you mentioned, the new movie, I was wondering, probably if there's talks about it, it will be a contract, but would you be willing to return as Gimli in the new movie? And how did you feel when you knew about this new movie?
Well, I'm so glad for Andy. I haven't been invited to go back. I'm really too old, you know. There are lots of new tricks that they can play these days. But I couldn't bear, you know, come on. You know, makeup in that chair for 8 hours a day. Wow. You know, I don't have that many days or years left, and there are other things that I really want to do. I mean, Andy gets a chance to make his movie. I want to make mine as well. But there's no question about it. I'm really rather thrilled. And Ian McKellen apparently has been asked to go back, which is wonderful. Silly old fart falling off the stage. Actually, yes. I think he was a bit disappointed in having to stop that stage play. But he's a marvelous actor, wonderful actor, and I think he can do Gandalf, you know, quite easily. Yeah, it should be interesting.
Thank you so much.
Great question. We have about 10 minutes left, so if you guys have some more questions, now's your chance to ask. I guess in the meantime, since you're talking about live stage productions, obviously you've done your fair share as well. And out of curiosity, how does being on stage influence your performances on screen and vice versa?
They're all about communication. You know, you've just got to work out how much energy you're pushing out. Now on stage, and I played Manchester Opera House, which is, I think, 2,200 people in it. And actually, one afternoon, there was a great England-Wales rugby match on, and it was a matinee, and I counted 47 people in the audience. That's roughly about what we got here. Now, you've got a 2,200-seat theatre, and to be seen at the back, it means you have to occupy a bigger stage. The old lungs have got to really start pushing that burst out. It was very interesting. One day, that particular performance, all my fellow actors came on, and they took one look round and thought, "Oh my goodness me!" Which means, of course, when you're the lead, I was playing Falstaff. You know, you've got to really sort of pack more energy in it to get the energy out of your fellow actors sometimes. So and then there was that moment in the middle of the second act, I think it is, where I come on and I look around the stage and I think, wait a minute, I think I've come on to do the scene where I've just been thrown into the Thames. But this isn't the set they've got on. All right, so I came on. Now, what are you going to do? You're going to turn around and say, "I'm sorry, they haven't got the right props on. I can't do the scene right at the moment." You can't do that. So I came on and said, "Bardolph! Bardolph, I say! Where's my truckle bed? Where's Where's my table? And slowly there's a scurrying going on in the wings, and where, Bardolph, you, and then I remembered a little bit of Ben Jonson. You scurvy, navy, nasty, particle, rogue, where art thou, man? Bardolph comes on, sees the situation, and immediately the stage is now, the scene is now being reset, props are being put into place like this, and I'm ranting on like this. Now, Bardolph, poor fellow, he knows I've been sort of vamping now for a minute and a half, and he tries to help me. So he jumps in and says, Sir John, Mistress Quickly is at the door. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, you've cut out my big soliloquy, for God's sake. So I said to him, well, tell her to wait. And then I started the scene. But those scenes, they're such fun. Having to think on your feet. And I remember the end of that. One of my actors friends turned to the other and said, that was a jolly good thing for a run. That not a bad little run through of the matinee, wasn't it? And I'm absolutely bone dead and exhausted, thinking, oh God, we've got to do it again tonight. But great fun. I'm sorry, I beg you.
Hey, I think we have time for one more question.
Oh, we've always got time for one more.
Perfect. What's your name, my friend?
My name's Patrick, and I just wanted to know, in playing Sala in the Indiana Jones franchise, was it like riding a bike, or was it difficult to kind of get yourself back in the mindset into that role between the first and the last film?
It is a bit like riding a bicycle. Even if you know how to ride a bicycle. Mind you, I haven't ridden a bicycle for some 50-odd years. Yes, well, that'd be interesting. No, of course I could ride a bicycle. I'm an actor. I can do anything. Oh, God. Anyway, no, it wasn't too difficult coming back. Frankly, for me, the film doesn't work. It is... I did not see any strong relationships in it. I gave a great cheer when Marion comes on, right at the end. And to me, she steals the picture. It has not been received as well by the public as they'd hoped. I mean, it is... But by and large, you need to take 3 times at the box office what it costs to make the film to really break even. It hasn't got to 900,000 yet at the box office. And you notice that there doesn't appear to be too much merchandising except Lego. It's a $300 million production that I think that actually it excites, in some ways very exciting. And I love the idea of the Dial of Destiny at the end. Fantastic. But it doesn't seem to me to have any real relationships in it.
It was a bit nostalgic, though.
Well, yes. But to take Banderas, the most exciting actor of his generation, and to stick him in a silly beard, well, he has a silly beard, but so have I, but his is bigger than mine, and I suffer from beard envy, an ugly thing in a man. But to take Banderas and give him so little to do, oh, what a waste of talent. What a waste of talent. And besides, that's where obviously Salah and Captain Katanga should have come back. Yeah. And the value of those, of a 40-year cycle of film, it is about that, isn't it? is you really want to see that those old loyalties and old relationships and old friendships really are still there and are still the turning points of the movie. And it's like that. You know, Anyway, I'm a bitch and I agree.
Good question.
Are there any more questions? We've always got time to leach into somebody else's time, haven't we? Oh,
And I was also going to say, if they don't want to come to the mic, if they want to ask from their chair as well, as long as you guys project and we can hear you, don't feel like you have to come to the mic. Any final questions? We got John Rhys-Davies here. Yes, go ahead.
You mentioned that there are other things that you want to do other than a few minutes ago. What are those other things that you'd like to do?
Right at the moment, I am finishing a commercial script for a friend of mine on a theme that I cannot tell you about. All I could say is that any writers here, when you discover what the subject is, will go, oh, why didn't I? To make a man of whose life's experience you could really write down, literally on two sides of a postcard, based on his own facts. And of course, the facts, we all lie about our lives. He is particularly adept at lying about his life. But to make it come to life in the context of his time is proving to be very difficult. I also got approached the other day by a couple of young men who said, we would like to make a comic book of your life. And I said, no, we're not going to do that. It's tragic enough. You know that wonderful aphorism of Oscar Wilde, isn't it? Life is a comedy for those that think, a tragedy for those who feel. Anyway, so we're not making a comic book. But I said, look, we could make a comic book of the imagined lives of some of JRD's characters. So it starts off, JRD is on the stage. He's talking like this, and somehow we're signing autographs as well. And suddenly, right charging through the whole room, pushing people aside, comes a wild-haired man who grabs Rhys-Davies' hand and thrusts something into it and says, find it, find them, or your life will be forfeit. And then people say, oh, call the security and all that sort of thing. The very cool John Rhys-Davies says, oh, all right, it's all right, hang on, my friend here, my friend here has given me a very interesting ring. It's a legionary ring. It's a ring of the famous Lost Legion, the 9th Legion. Wow. So I guess he wants me to find what happened to the Lost Legion. My friends, I'm John Rhys-Davies, the actor. I may have in movies discovered the Lost Ark, but I'm really not an archaeologist. I may have traveled through space and time as Max Arturo, but really, I'm not really a scientist or an astrophysicist. And though I may be grumpy, I'm really not Gimli the Dwarf either. At which point, the audience all settles down, and Rhys-Davies sits back down on the chair, but the chair collapses, and he lands head first on the ground. And suddenly, he's sitting on a branch of a tree with his pants down with 3 other Roman officers and an entire legion of men facing him. Wow. And that's where the adventure begins.
So serious.
And then, of course, there are the movies that I'm going to go out and shake the money tree and make my movies because I think I know what makes movies work. We want great stories. We want to celebrate the human spirit. I want to make movies where, at the end of it, the audience cries and cheers at the same time. And it's doable. So yes.
Great.
Well, thank you for the question.
Well, thank you for sharing your time with us. You're amazing. Thank you for your stories.
ago on a hot Orlando afternoon. And I hope you've cooled down now. I hope that there is food for you somewhere. You're a marvelous audience, and it's wonderful to be back here in Orlando. And what a delight you all are. Thank you for putting up with me.
Thank you. Love you, John.